Well, my dear friend, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Very good, sir. Thank you.
You look wonderful.
You're very kind. You look wonderful too. God bless you, sir.
Both of you always look wonderful. Your hair
And you
is
look
growing
wonderful
in.
too, Jeff.
Just
You look very wonderful, Judah. God bless you.
your hair, Rob, is a beacon of hope.
God bless you, sir. God bless you.
Modern medicine is amazing.
No, modern medicine is absolutely amazing. It's just
it is true. It's really true. Really true.
I mean, who would have ever thunk it?
Yeah, it's incredible. You look great. You look fabulous. You look like a movie star.
You do. And on that note, I want to welcome everybody to the world according to Ben Stein. We are stroking Rob Kendall's ego. And I want to thank everybody that's listening and watching in our YouTube chat. I want to thank everybody for downloading the podcast. It means the world to us, especially when we have gotten banned a little bit by YouTube. I won't bring up why, because then they could ban me again. But we're joined tonight by 93.1 WIBC, BAM, the future of conservative talk radio. As always, Rob Kendall.
It is a snowstorm here in central Indiana, but it is warm with your hearts.
Is that true, really? Is there a snowstorm there, really?
Limbs are falling left and right. There are leaves on the trees, and they are falling over.
Wow, that's amazing. And it was warm today, and wow, in LA.
That is amazing.
I recommend that everyone move to LA.
Yeah, sure. And of course, we are joined by actor, songwriter, philanthropist, doctor, scientist, magician, provocateur, the most
economist, lawyer,
economist,
writer,
yes.
Novelist.
Yes, don't say mathematician, because that's what got me into trouble. And of course, we welcome America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. Welcome aboard, sir.
Welcome to be honored to be here, sir.
Thank you for everybody listening. I mean, where to start? There's so much going on, but first I want to get right into this Mad Maxine thing with her inflammatory comments. Ben, it took 3.5 months for this autopsy on this police officer who died, which is a real tragic loss in the Capitol. And were the grounds of impeachment. I don't know what autopsies take 3.5 months. But you also had a woman that got shot by the police that, no charges.
For no reason.
For absolutely no reason, Ben. But you have Maxine Waters, who has been stirring the pot of first getting into people's face. I mean, you know her. She's been doing this for years.
Judah. Literally, this just occurred to me. I have been dealing with her since before you were born.
That's a long time, and
yes,
and
sir.
That's why a lot of people say term limits, because Maxine Waters has been there. That means for 44 years of greed, of corruption, and hostility, and now
racism,
actually
and
pretty much
vile racism, racism,
and Ben now calling for violent, pretty much confrontation. If Trump or anybody, and we know this, said anything even remotely similar to this, he got impeached. She wouldn't even get censored. She couldn't even get censored from her own party.
May I back up a little bit?
Yes.
Why do I know Maxine Waters? Because when I moved here to glorious LA, center of the universe, I wrote a column for many years for our afternoon paper, the glorious Herald Examiner, the wonderful, wonderful Herald Examiner, edited by one of America's great editors, Jim Bellows. And then by a wonderful, super great woman editor named Mary Ann Dolan. And then by another great editor named Stan Cloud. And I wrote 4 columns a week, or maybe either 3 or 4 columns a week. The big issue in LA at that time was school busing. Should children from the inner city, usually African-American freedom fighters in the making, be bused to suburban schools, mostly white, mostly composed of white fascist children, and thereby presumably improve their education? I said no. Sitting a white child next to a black child does not make the black child a better student, smarter, or in any way improve his or her life. If he or she wants to learn, he or she can learn without having to be bussed all over Kingdom Come. And there are 2 wonderful women in LA, Roberta something or other, Roberta Weintraub, and another one whose name was, I forget it now, who fought against this busing. And there are two giant referenda in LA that voted overwhelmingly against school busing. The federal judges, taking their typical Bolshevik stand, ordered busing anyway. The result, all the schools have been destroyed. The whole school system is destroyed, except for Beverly Hills, where I happen to be sitting right now, and Malibu, where we also happen to have a house. And they are not part of the LA Unified School District. So Maxine Waters helped propel school busing to fruition, which killed the LA Unified School District. And she is a bad person, just in my opinion. I'm not God, but I think she's a very bad person.
Well, you're allowed to give your opinion, even if you're not God, because we're on this universe, right, Rob?
Yeah, and I have a question because what is it about California rewarding idiot politicians? And this Night Stalker documentary that was on Netflix, you realize that Dianne Feinstein, when she was mayor of San Francisco, almost gave away the identity of the Night Stalker so they couldn't catch him. And now we hear about Maxine Waters. Why does California keep rewarding dumbasses?
Why does everyone keep rewarding dumbasses? I mean, who's sitting in the White House right now? Who's
senator from California?
Who's Speaker of the House of Representatives? Who's Majority Leader of the Senate? I mean, who's Governor of New York State? I mean, we human beings make terrible mistakes, and with the media completely in the hands of the leftists and the liberals, then we're going to keep electing dumbasses. And I might add, there are plenty of conservative dumbasses too.
Yes, that's the point. Also, is that they decided no Dems censored Maxine Waters, Rob, but you had plenty of Republicans there to impeach Trump in the second time. You had plenty of Republicans there chiding him and all of these different things. Anything Trump could have said that day is a blip compared to what Maxine Waters called for this weekend.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please, Rob. I beg your pardon. You go, please.
No. We're talking about this on the air today. That you have this police officer who died of natural causes. I've never heard of an autopsy taking 3 months, but yet let's talk about dumbasses. Mitt Romney, Murkowski, Collins, Ben Sass. I think Richard Burr was in there. I mean, all of these.
Oh, no, please. No, I like Richard Burr. Please don't tell me he was in there. That's awful.
He was. I believe he was too.
Oh, that breaks my heart. It really does. Wow.
Go on, Rob.
I mean, all of these, by the way, I used to talk to Richard Burr quite a bit when I did talk radio down in North Carolina. And I know you love him, Ben, but there's not a lot there, man. I'm sorry.
Okay, if you say so.
Not a lot there.
No, but Ben, it goes to this point, and when we said, I love that line from Bob Seger, surrounded by strangers I thought were my friends. That seems to be the constant theme in the Republican Party or in the courts. No matter who we vote on, no matter who we get in there, they tend to never be our friends. It's one of the most fascinating and frightening things. You witness it yourself twice in 2 lifetimes, Ben. You witness it with Nixon and you witnessed it with Trump. These feckless Republicans, and I'm more maddened by the Republicans how that we don't unify than I am at Dems for all sticking together for Maxine Waters. At least they coalesce around it.
I think your point is well taken. There is something in the psyche of many Republicans which just is not tough enough, not determined enough to get the job done. And I think I don't know why that is. I really don't. I think it's maybe because they come from different backgrounds. I don't know, but I do know. I learned something incredibly interesting last night. Now, you're going to say to me, Judah, why is this interesting? In 1944, we were in the middle, towards the end of a huge war. And FDR had been president during the whole of the time of the U.S. was in the war. And there was an election between him and the Republican, Thomas E. Dewey. And incredibly, even in the middle of a war, Dewey came fairly close to winning the popular vote. He didn't win it, but he came fairly close to winning it, even in a war. So there is a fairly good-sized nucleus of conservatives in America, or at least there was. And the fact that we've had several conservative Republicans in the last 20 years in office, or some anyway, shows me that they're out there. We have to stick together to appeal them, to appeal them. I think the Germans have a phrase, I may be saying is that ausholen or something like that. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, which means something like all together. We have to be all together, and we're not. We're just not.
And somebody brings up something, Rob, that you often hear this, and I don't believe it to be the truth, that Republicans play by the rules. No, they don't. Republicans don't play by the rules. They're just a bunch of timid, independent jackasses, like you guys said. That
I did not say they're a bunch of timid, independent jackasses.
No, but you used that word before. But they're both, they don't play by the rules. They play for rules for themselves. They place themselves above party, Rob.
Yeah, I don't know what reason there is to vote for Republicans anymore. I mean, how many times do conservatives work their asses off to get these people elected, and then they do nothing for us? I mean, it's interesting because George Bush did an interview the other day with Nora O'Donnell from NBC, where he completely he completely throws the Trump voter under the bus. It's the typical Bush bull crap. And yet he's doing it on a network and with a group of people that did everything in their power to destroy him.
His father.
Exactly. He throws me under the bus, who voted for the guy who defended his nonsensical gibberish for years. He was a total disappointment. And yet he goes and he lines up with these people. This is why I hate the Bushes. It's one of my favorite things to talk about on the air is how much I hate the Bushes. And George Bush and Roberts is the epitome of the Bush administration, right? If the Bush administration were a person, it would be John Roberts. It happens time and time and time again.
And let's not forget, Ben Stein, he didn't pardon Scooter Libby. It was President Trump that pardoned Scooter Libby. So he couldn't even pardon a guy that took it on that took it for them.
That was very bad of him to do that. I campaigned for him. I've been friends, and my parents were friends with the Bush family forever. And that not pardoning Scooter Libby was really, really, really disappointing. I mean, I think that the second the Iraq War was very disappointing. I mean, I don't understand that. So I still don't understand
you not bailing out Lehman Brothers, you consider that one of the...
Oh my God, wait. Let me back up. Thank you very much, Judah Meyer Friedman. When the crash was happening, I pleaded with my friend, a really wonderful man, Mr. Rove, please, on your knees if necessary, beg Mr. Bush to bail out Lehman Brothers. Didn't do it. I said to him, why didn't he do it? Who's he afraid of? Is he afraid of Paulson? He was Secretary of the Treasury then. And Mr. Rove said, yes, I think he is, and I am too. And I thought to myself, my God, even I, a pauper living in a shack, am not afraid of Paulson. And you, the president, are afraid of this bully Paulson? I don't get it at all. I really don't get it. On the other hand, let's look at Bush Sr., big time war hero, excellent athlete, Yale, skull and bones. So there's something to them.
Not much. I got to agree with Rob on this. The two of them have more death on their hands than way necessary. And I don't care how many books George W. Bush, draws of fallen soldiers so he could reconcile his own inner damage. He's the one that set them on that trail to get maimed and to get murdered. And MSNBC, the station that he's on, was calling him a Nazi at the time. So
yeah, the idea that any Bush, well, they're not all alive now, would appear on MSNBC is extremely puzzling. That's mysterious.
And think about this. George W. Bush's wife has accounted for more deaths than Donald Trump did.
Wait a minute, I don't understand
Because she
that.
killed somebody, right?
Well, I don't think she was drunk, but I mean, I'm not
Okay.
trying to be smart when I say that. I mean, they act like this guy is the devil because he didn't play by their rules, because people were inspired by him, because he wasn't them. They were looking at somebody that wasn't them, and they can't stand it.
With all due respect, I know Mrs. Bush. I consider her a friend. She's certainly a friend of my wife's. She was a high school girl when this happened. She had just had a big fight with her boyfriend. She wasn't driving carefully. We've all driven badly when we've had fights with our boyfriend or girlfriend. So, I mean, that doesn't make her a murderer or anything remotely like that.
I'm not saying it does, Ben, but what I'm saying is they act like Trump is this horrific human being.
Right.
And it's just totally hypocritical because W. Bush is responsible for tens of thousands of people going to the most horrific deaths humanly possible.
Well, he's president, so he's allowed to do that. But you're right. He made a serious mistake going into Iraq. It was a very, very serious mistake. It was a very, very serious mistake. And I don't know what to say. It's a very serious mistake. I think we all now see it was a very serious mistake. I don't know if you know this, but just before the war started, Saddam Hussein made a public offer that he would, if we would let him stay in office, he would have a heavy-duty contingent of the U.S. Marines or Army or Special Forces or somebody like that standing around him. They would be his guards, making sure he didn't do anything bad for the indefinite future if they would just let him stay in office. That would have been an awfully good deal.
Yeah, I think so. And just to get to what the point Rob was making is all these people like to put themselves on pedestals above Trump and by proxy, on a pedestal above us. All of these people have skeletons in their, those who, that expression, shouldn't throw stones at glass out, whatever that expression is, that I'm a little tired and I can't think of that. They should stop looking down on us. And
I don't think I really, with respect to you, Judah, who is such a dear friend, and Rob, whom I still is already consider a dear friend, I don't think they're looking down at you. I think they are not properly educated. I think it's been a long time since we had a president who really was educated, especially about foreign affairs. I would say certainly since Nixon, nobody's ever come close to the understanding and facility about foreign affairs that Richard Nixon had. And I certainly, and in this century, nobody, in the 20th century rather, nobody ever came close to the facility that Mr. Nixon had. And he was treated just incredibly badly by the Republican Party and by the media. And a friend of mine, a very smart young woman, just showed me a packet of newspapers she saved from Nixon's last days in office, which quotes about how he was going to be kicked out of office and he was irredeemably bad. We're coming from Republicans. We're coming from Barry Goldwater, of all people.
And you, Ben Stein, my friend, I have to disagree with you because I would say on foreign policy, there's been no better president since Nixon, you could say, than Donald Trump.
No, I said since Nixon, certainly.
Right. We have had a president in this century that's been a great foreign policy.
I think I said the 20th century.
Okay, my bad. 21st century. And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to That Man, America's humble servant, Benjamin Jeremy Stein. I want to thank everybody that's watching and listening in our YouTube chat tonight. I want to thank everybody that's been downloading the podcast. We're joined tonight from 93.1 WIBC, BAM, the future of conservative talk radio, Rob Kendall, and of course, Ben Stein. And I want everybody to understand something. And I always say this, and this is one of my favorite things about doing this show, is we don't always agree with each other. And that's what separates us from them. That if you're on the left, you have to, the rabbit hole goes deeper and deeper and deeper every day of what you have to go be okay with. And today it's Maxine, or yesterday it was Maxine Waters, pretty much calling for violence on Americans. And we choose not to live like that and be like that and have discourse. But I want to
can I go on from that, if I may, to something
Yes.
that I want to say on this day when Mr. Chauvin, or Officer Chauvin, or whatever his rank was convicted of several different very serious counts of homicide. let's hope that this is a launch pad for not for condemning the police, but for saying there's one bad apple. And most of the police are incredibly wonderful, brave men and women. And let's not be caught up in a groundswell of hatred towards the police because this one guy acted not just badly, but very badly, apparently, according to the jury. And by the way, I sure would not have wanted to be on that jury. But anyway, and that's so. Let's use this as an opportunity to say, yes, this fellow was a very unfortunate person, at least so far as we know. But the police generally save our butts every hour of every day.
Every single day, and way more cops are injured in the line of duty than unarmed black men or unarmed white people or unarmed anybody are on a yearly. You could do the multiples of it. And Rob, they are making a hero of Floyd, and
that's really happening, by the way, Judah. Judah showed me a whole bunch of. No, I'm sorry. Oh, I saw these on my phone. All these Democrats all over the country are saying that Mr. Floyd was a hero. Excuse me, a victim for sure, no doubt about it. A victim, but this was a man with a lengthy criminal record, including some acts of horrifying violence. And I mean, it wasn't as if this was the Lord Jesus Christ being crucified. This was a very seriously derelict human being. Should not have had what happened. But he's not a saint. He was not a saint. It should not have happened, though.
But I want to get into something. So you have these two numbskulls, Rob and Ben, Biden and Harris, both basically saying this is systemic racism. This will root out systemic racism. And just the fact that people thought they voted in a black woman means we don't have systemic racism. And just the fact that this jury, Rob, came back with a guilty verdict when it was 6 white jurors.
Several guilty verdicts.
Right, 3 counts should prove that there's no systemic racism. It's like an amazing thing. Every day they make these claims of systemic racism, and every day we have proof, Rob, that it isn't systemic racism.
Yeah, well, but proof doesn't matter anymore. And look, this dude knew he was guilty. That's why he tried to plead to 3rd-degree murder last year. And what floors me is, even though everybody knew he was guilty, that they went to such great lengths. I mean, I was watching Fox News during the coverage, and almost to a person, every one of them led by Andrew McCarthy. Ben, I don't know if you know Andrew McCarthy.
I don't, I'm afraid.
For Fox News, said, look, they really ran a risk here of on appeal getting this thing overturned because of all these things that took place, and repeatedly, whether it was the city publicly settling this lawsuit right before the trial started, the Maxine Waters stuff, the Joe Biden stuff, not moving the trial out of Minneapolis. You had the judge, on several of these issues talking about it, that they didn't need to taint the jury pool. It was blatantly obvious this guy was guilty.
And here's my biggest question that I just thought of, and I thought about earlier today. I want to ask you, Ben, the jury wasn't sequestered. How in a case like this could you not have a sequestered jury? So they're out, and they all promised that they didn't watch the news over the weekend. I mean, just by proxy of having this phone, you get updates. You get Google updates, you get some sort of updates on our phones, okay, Ben? That none of these people saw what Maxine Waters said over the weekend is an impossibility. Even ESPN was covering this. So even if you're a sports fan, you were watching this, Ben.
Well, the trial should have been moved out of Minneapolis. All these comments certainly tainted any possible jury pool. But I would say a little more frightening than that is that all of America was terrorized and terrified by the possibility of gigantic riots and looting and civil unrest unless guilty verdicts on the highest possible level of charges were found. And so America was held hostage by a group of violent domestic people, way more so than we ever were by the Nazis or the Japanese or even the Soviet Russians. And that's a terrifying thought. I mean, that to me is really a very, very close to a death sentence for America.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting on appeal because there's zero way in the modern era, like you said, Judah, that even if you tried to avoid the news, it's not the way it used to be where, oh, just don't watch TV, don't read the paper, and you'll probably be all right. Leave your radio on, classic hits, and it'll be okay. There's no way those people there could have avoided it. I'm not even saying it's any fault of their own. There were just a lot of things here that seemed like they let it open on appeal that this could be overturned, which is the worst thing possible that could happen. When you
and by the way, there's no appellate court judge in America who has the courage to overturn this verdict. I mean, I personally think there are grounds for appeal and retrial.
Well,
but
here's the
I'm
thing.
not a great expert in this area. I don't pretend to be a great expert in this area. But why? No. Everybody's scared to death of urban Antifa, and someone just texted in onto the screen that Antifa is the brown shirts of the Democrat Party and of the modern era, and I'm afraid that's true. We now have an America in which people are just terrified of the blacks and the brown shirts, and people are just terrified. I've never seen America in a climate of fear such as the one we have now.
Ben, you constantly talk about what they were doing to the Constitution in a little over 90 days. First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Sixth Amendment, 14th Amendment. Okay, so like the sixth is due process, the fifth and 14th have to do with a fair trial, that the jury basically shouldn't be tainted. And there's no way this jury couldn't have been tainted, Ben. It's an impossibility. And you're right. No judge is going to hear this case. No, I mean, they would have to put him like with a blackface and have his voice changed and, one of those holograms basically, because no judge, Rob, in their right mind is ever going to touch this case.
No. Too scary. And by the way, I'm sorry, Rob, I interrupt you. I beg your pardon.
No. I just find it just amazing, though, that the lengths they went to when they didn't have to, because he knew he did something, right? I mean, you don't volunteer to plead guilty to third-degree murder if you didn't do something, and that's the thing of it all. It's look, justice was served here. George Floyd should not have died. He's not a great guy. He's not somebody that should be celebrated. But the cop Chauvin did something inappropriate. The justice system
wildly inappropriate.
But we don't get our cities back now, right? The justice system.
Oh, that's really good. That is really, really good. That's really, really good. That is really, really, really good. Now it's funny you say that, because many a time on this wonderful program, I have said, people should, if they have their wits about them, move to North Idaho. But my friends in North Idaho now tell me that there's nothing for sale, that everybody from New York and Boston and San Francisco and Oakland and Portland and Seattle have bought everything there. So you can't move there. So it's too late. Sorry.
And that was the great promise. I mean, I want people to realize that I have to be careful how I phrase this, because I don't want another episode being banned. But a lot of suburban women for sure voted for safety, thinking that they were the great lie, Rob, that when Biden and Harris come in, we wouldn't be living in fear of Antifa and of, the brown shirts and BLM, and everything was just going to go back. That was like the great lie, right? People talk about the great reset. They thought we'd be great reset to the president. That's sort of a whatever that looks good in his suit. And we're in far more dangerous land right now, Ben and Rob, than we have been in a long time.
Yeah, very, very dangerous. Very dangerous. Even, very, very, very scary. Control of the media, control of the political mechanism. Although I think, again, for the millionth time, we have a chance of getting that back in the next election of the House of Representatives. Maybe, but it's an uphill battle always with the media against us. But I live most of the time in a very, very nice neighborhood, and I have to say, even I, in this very nice neighborhood, am in fear a lot of the time. And give us back our cities. what happened? I mean, what happened? All, as Judah said, our Constitution, that's our real shield. Wifey and I have a home in a gated community, two homes in two different gated communities. We won't be able to afford them as long, but Wifey and I have them. But the real gated gates is the Constitution, and that's just being ripped apart, ripped to shreds by the Biden administration and by its lackeys in the various other parts of the government
and the media. And on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. I want to thank everybody that's in the YouTube chat. We are reading your comments. I want to remind everybody to get Ben's newsletter, benstein.substack.com. And please download the podcast. We don't know much longer YouTube is going to put up with us, but we'll always figure out a way to do this show live, either via Zoom, however it is, even if it's via a mass phone call. We will do this show live, and we appreciate every single one of you. We're joined tonight, of course, by Rob Kendall from 93.1 WIBC, BAM, the future of conservative talk radio, and of course, the future of conservatism and the past of conservatism. How many people could say that? Benjamin Jeremy Stein. And I want to get into this quickly, Ben, because I don't want this to get glossed over, right? So we have one story already with the bounties that was debunked, that was brought against Trump, that was used to sort of help impeach him.
May I ask you to explain to our fine viewers and listeners what that was? Because that's a huge story which has now sort of disappeared, and I'm not sure everyone knows what it is.
Where Russia was being accused of putting bounties on our troops. And
in Afghanistan, while Mr. Trump was making nice with Mr. Putin, the New York Times accused the Russians of putting bounties on our troops such that they would pay some large sum to anyone who killed a U.S. soldier. And that, so the conclusion being, so it's disgusting that in that circumstance, Mr. Trump is making nice with Putin. Then it turned out that it was all made up.
Right. And so, and that was from the same intel community that told us about weapons of mass destruction, apparently. But now we get this thing with this guy, with the police, what's his name, Sicknick, the Capitol Hill police officer who sadly died. They had to have known on January 6th and a half, as he was in the hospital, or the day after that he died, that it was of a stroke, Ben and Rob, not of getting hit in the head with a fire extinguisher, which never happened. Doctors could tell pretty much very quickly. I'm guessing, I'm not a forensic specialist, I don't play one on TV, but I'm guessing they would have known almost 3.5 months ago how this guy died. And it's just another one of these lies and these myths that's, once it's out there, there's no taking it back.
Scary, again, the unchecked power of the media. Think of the various people we're dealing with who have unchecked power. Media, nobody holds them to account. Prosecutors, nobody holds them to account. Judges, nobody holds them to account. President of the United States, if he's a Democrat, nobody holds him to account. BLM, as long as there's black, as long as they're black, nobody holds them to account. It's a very scary situation. Your humble servant, Wah, spent most of last night watching a long and very, very interesting documentary about the post-Civil War treatment of African-American freedom fighters and their white oppressors. And it was really heartbreakingly sad how, it was called Reconstruction, and heartbreakingly sad how Black Americans were treated, just unbelievably shameful the way Black Americans were treated for such a long time after the Civil War. Heartbreaking. But the great triumph of America is that we have gone way past that. And instead of celebrating that, there's ever more troublemaking. I just don't understand why people can't say, well, we've made great progress. But I guess there's no money in that. There's no money in praising America.
And there's no votes. You don't win elections. Right. You don't win, Rob. Right. So aren't you as much fascinated by the fact that this took 3.5 months to get out?
Well, I think I'm more fascinated in the lack of inquisitiveness. I don't know. Is inquisitiveness a word? That sounds like a word. A lack of inquisitive nature. How about that? By people like Mitt Romney and Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, and this goes for the public in general, because we saw it in this Derek Chauvin trial too. There's no way you went through all the evidence, that volume of evidence, in the amount of time it took for them to come to a verdict. I'm not saying they got to the wrong conclusion, but when you get guy's life in your hands, you got to do the research.
That is a great point.
That is a really great point. What
yeah.
was it, like 20 hours, less than 20 hours? Yeah, because of course the BLM and the other people in the streets had a gun to their head. And I have to say, if I were living in Minneapolis, I would be sad at the death of the freedom of our city, but very, very glad that our city was not burned to the ground.
Now, in fairness, they did put in about 5 times the amount of deliberation that the OJ jury did. But
well, that was a I believe, if I may say this, I might be wrong, that was an all-black jury, right, in OJ, and I know for a fact that it was, and so that was very, very clear racial gerrymandering. But this jury was racially mixed, but still, I would have been terrified to be on that jury, and I think everybody on that jury was terrified to be on that jury.
I mean, they had the camera on him during that whole thing, and Chauvin, and he barely blinked. Like, he knew what was going to happen. There was no emotion whatsoever. He knew walking in there what that verdict was going to be. It wasn't emotional when they cuffed him and took him away. And again, I'm not saying they got to the wrong conclusion, but how in the hell do you hear weeks worth of evidence and in that amount of time just go, yeah, okay, I think he's guilty? I mean,
on all 3 counts, and
yes.
not even question, yes. because with each count comes a different form of or different way of your brain thinking, and a different logic into it. Now, we know the guy, we know through the whole story, and obviously we all saw the situation occur, but there is nuance, and we forget there is nuance in situations. And Derek Chauvin could have said, I mean, there's a case to be made that he lost his damn mind, okay? That he was sitting there, because who in their right mind would do what he did for 9 minutes? Yeah. And I have to say, if you're a cop or a police officer, you are put into certain states that could distort your reality for moments. That's just my humble opinion.
I think you're totally right. And I think it's amazing that we don't recognize that and that we don't give more thanks to the police. It's a very bad day for the police, but we can turn it around and say, yes, we recognize there was a bad actor there, but we also recognize that we depend moment by moment of all of our lives on the heroism of the police.
And the same thing is true, the lack of inquisitiveness and the lack of effort put into the deliberation for a Romney and a Ben Sasse and all of these other people who voted.
Well, Romney isn't even a person.
It's great to hear Ben Stein say that. You can put that on your show, Rob. But no, you're completely right. I mean, you have Romney, Sasse, the ass. You have, the other, Tinkerbell over there, and the few others and you had 10, I think, 10 Republicans in the House that voted for impeachment, that didn't look at this situation and say, and again, as Ben always says, it's to be liked, because they would rather be liked than hated, or because they think somehow this makes them okay. Never realizing, Ben, it never makes you okay. No matter how much you capitulate to the Nazis, if you're a Jew, you're still a Jew. You might be murdered a little later, okay? That's your best hope, Rob. And it's a great point you raised, Rob. The 20 hours, that's all it took for them to
I don't think it was even 20 hours.
Right, they probably did it in like half an hour, and the judge is like, guys, we need you to be in there a little longer, make it look like you're actually doing something. They didn't ask for evidence. They didn't ask for anything. Everything that you see in a normal court case, not one juror had a question. This was the most uninquisitive jury I've ever seen in my life. And again,
incredible. Did not ask to see a review of videotape, photographs, autopsy report, nothing. That's unheard of. I mean, those of us who are great fans of the wonderful, wonderful TV show Forensic Files know that rarely happens. Boy, that is a great show, right? That's a great show.
We love Forensic Files.
It's one of the best shows of all time. That narrator is one of the greatest narrators of all time. I honestly believe Forensic Files might be the top 10 greatest shows of all time. But I want to flip it a little bit, Ben, because now you have all these different things. You have Gavin Newsom now coming out and saying this is, and you can't make this stuff up about toxic masculinity.
I thought that was, wait a minute, I thought that was his wife.
Oh, that was same thing. Okay.
No, I know it's not quite the same thing. I believe that was his wife who said that. I'm not. I think that was his wife who said that.
You were the one, yeah. So his wife. I mean, but the systemic racism thing and all this strummed up nonsense, and to what? And I brought this up with Rob the other day, and he spoke about it, I believe, on the air too. The NBA ratings are down by 50%, Ben. 50% from last year, which was down like 30% from the year before. All sports right now, the NFL basically said, we're doubling down on wokeness. We're doubling down on all of these things. And eventually, you talk about the fiduciary duty. Eventually, people are going to be like, Coca-Cola didn't speak about this at their quarterly meeting. They refused, I believe, to take questions and answers on this. So
May I ask a question? Your Honor? Tell me, because I'm an old man, what, by the way, that's very funny. I'm an old man. A woman sent me very risque pictures of herself. I barely know her, and said that would I send her money? And I said, well, I didn't know you or anything. And she said, so you're not going to send me money because you're a pathetic, sad, lonely old man. Anyway, so.
No, the same thing happened to me. Somebody asked me for pictures.
No, not pictures. She wanted money. Anyway, okay, let's have a definition from you two smart gentlemen of what is wokeness. What does that mean?
Rob? And I got to tell you, Ben, that's a great question.
Yeah, I think it is a fear of being judged in society and coming up with a belief system for what oftentimes borders on or eclipses into insanity in order to not offend a very large group of crazy people.
Okay, that's very, very good.
So I'll answer it now, so Rob has more time to think about his answer, and then we could get your answer. Because I believe it is a symptom, a mental disorder that crosses between borderline personality disorder, narcissism, everything, and it basically every day you wake up and just misery. I don't know. I don't even. It's just you're miserable. People, and I've said this to you. Why are people that are so woke so asleep? Why are they the most boring humans, joyless humans? Because if you think about it, Ben, right? When somebody is woke, right, that should be like, they're hip, they're jive. But in this case, it's the opposite. But I'll let you explain it, since you asked.
I don't know what it is either, but I would say it is an attempt to endlessly kiss the behinds of African Americans, and whether or not they want it. And we had a guest on the show quite recently, a young man with a very interesting mustache, who said that Black men in America are the most conservative, distinctive ethnic and age group in America. But somehow that does not seem to have most conservative, not most conservative.
He doesn't have a mustache, but go on.
Well, I beg your pardon.
By the way, we can't prove it because he's the video that got banned. But go on.
Oh, you're kidding.
No, I swear. So yes, so he either has one or he doesn't. Who knows? But go
anyway,
on.
I wonder if I were one of these people, how I would feel about this endless wokeness. Or whether I would feel it was condescending. I just wonder how. I wonder how they feel about it. I just don't know what the answer to that is. But the whole thing of America just endlessly walking around kissing the ass of African Americans, I find very troublesome. And I do not doubt for a minute that African Americans were very badly mistreated in America for a long, long time, shockingly long time. But things have improved so much, it kind of amazes me that now people are more angry than ever about it.
Okay, so I want to go back, Rob, onto what he said, because it's an important thing, because I sort of was agreeing with his sentiment. It's not that they're conservatives. Many in the African-American community, in the Black community, align very much so with the Christian right in their beliefs, right? They're anti-gay marriage, they're anti-abortion, they have certain of the common themes of the Christian right. Now, being in the Christian right, and the evangelicals who I love, it doesn't mean that's conservatism, okay? They vote Republican because that's who picks the supposed better judges. So Ben, I don't want to say they're conservatives in the sense of you and I and Rob being conservatives. They're closer to, with their certain beliefs, to the Christian right or the evangelicals.
But then in that case, I was under the impression the Christian right was overwhelmingly Republican.
Yes.
And yet these people at least vote overwhelmingly Democrat. So that's the puzzle that I wonder about.
So Robin,
but how racist is so much of the wokeness and so much of the platform of the Democrat Party? I mean, think about what they're saying in Georgia. They're basically saying Black people are too stupid to come up with an ID. It's super racist.
Well, the whole idea of wokeness is super racist.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of, look, go back to my friend Maxine Waters and her idea that if you take a Black child who's a human being, same biologically as a white human being, roughly the same age, and put the Black human being next to a white human being, that Black human being will understand better, learn better, read better, be able to do mathematics better. That was, I thought, extremely contemptuous of Black Americans.
and I want to raise a point though, just because people always talk about term limits, and I just thought in my head, the day Maxine Waters resigns or dies or whatever, her daughter's just going to run for her seat.
She won't die. Vampires are not.
No. What I'm saying, whenever it is, her daughter or her grandkid or somebody else of that nature will just take over the oligarchy of the Compton district. Rob, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
No. And you make a great point. We had that happen here when Julia Carson passed away, who'd been a congresswoman forever. And what happens? Her grandson, Andre Carson, who's an even bigger lunatic than she was, is in the seat. It's now this dynasty thing where husbands, wives, I mean, wasn't it Dingle that passed away and his wife just takes over the seat?
Mary Bono.
Yeah.
Oh, from my very own desert, Coachella Valley, yay, which we love so very, very much. Yay.
I mean, this. I mean, you're right to that extent. But the thing is, like, if I'm an African American, I'm looking at the way, the language they actually use and what they're actually saying in a lot of this woke liberal leftist policy, and I'm looking at this going as an independent thinker. You think I'm an idiot, and I'm too incompetent to do the functions of society. Why would I support those people?
Well, but somehow it's working. It's working for them.
It
shouldn't be, but it is.
It's okay. So here's the perfect example, right? We Michael Jordan has always said, Republicans buy sneakers too. So Ben and myself live in Hollywood. We live in this area, Rob, where you have a bunch of actors that have ostracized at least 50% of their fan base, right? Which goes against all rational thinking of not offending 50% of your fan base. No normal human being would be that stupid, and yet they are that stupid. And it's very hard to understand. I don't know what else to say about that, but it's extremely frustrating, and as Ben Stein, it's extremely hard to understand. They'd rather be the belle of the ball.
Well, it's the whole thing is only understandable as an incredibly cunning Marxist tactic to use guilt over race to overturn the greatest society there's ever been in the history of the world. We had this one loose string, and it was a big string, one loose string, which was racism of long ago. And they pulled on it and pulled on it and pulled on it, and soon the whole blanket became unraveled. And that is an incredibly clever Marxist tactic. It really is evil. The people I talk to nowadays who have children in school or who are in school themselves are thoroughly infected with this nauseating trick and nauseating deprivation of free speech. And it's desperately frightening to think how quickly free speech has disappeared, especially on the campuses. It's completely disappeared from what I hear tell, which I haven't taught for a while, but that's from what I hear tell.
Go ahead,
And maybe the scariest thing is it's not enough to just not be racist anymore. It's not just enough to be a good person. It's not just, that isn't enough anymore. Now you have to demand other people not only not be racist, but that other people should be treated differently. And that's like, that is super scary. And I keep asking this question on air and I don't really ever get a straight answer to it. What do I have to be sorry about? My great-great-grandfather fought in the Civil War for the Union. My grandfather fought in World War II for the freedom of all people. My family doesn't have a racist bone in their body. One of my best friends who I do radio with on a regular basis is African-American. I've employed African-Americans in my businesses that I've owned. What do I have to feel sorry about, and why should I feel bad and suffer?
You are totally right, but that's the incredible genius of this Marxist tactic, is it takes people who are nowhere near as smart as you are, who have, nowhere near the moral sense that you do, and it works on them. It works on people who are not very smart or well-informed. I mean, the people I know who have bought this hook, line, and sinker are generally speaking not very well-informed people. And there's a psychological part of this. I've discussed this before, and I think it's true. George Orwell had the 2-minute hate several times a day in Oceania under Big Brother. And everyone would stand out in the public spaces shouting, hate, hate, hate. And it lines up their personalities. It organizes their personalities. If they're having a bad day, if they're upset about something, if they're constipated, whatever it is, if they say hate, hate, hate enough, it lines up their personality. And that, I'm afraid, is very much what happens in the United States of America right now.
But, here's the thing, Ben, you raise a great point, and it's happening in high schools too. It's called Dissent. It's called
elementary schools. I have a dear friend, dear friend whose daughter's in elementary school.
But I wanted to get to the thing of dissent. Okay, dissent. So Ben, I want you to share the story with everybody. Ben was the valedictorian of his Yale Law School class.
But wait a second. By election of my classmates, not by grades. I did not
by
have
grades.
the highest
Now,
grades
Ben,
in the class.
tell everybody what it is you did to the teacher.
Well, this teacher was our antitrust teacher, and he used the Socratic method, which is to ask impossibly complex questions to which there is no answer, and then sort of make you feel stupid for not knowing the answer. And I was in this class, and I raised my hand when he wanted somebody to answer one of his impossible questions. And he said, what's your name? And I said, well, you can call me Benji. And I said, no. He said, no, your last name. And I said, you can just call me Benji. And he said, well, what's the answer? And I said, sir, there is no answer. You know it very well. It's just more of these nauseating Socratic method mind games you guys play to screw over our heads. And if you don't stop doing it right now, I'm going to stand up and take my clothes off in class. And he was so upset that I said some more things too that are really quite politically incorrect now. But he was so upset, he stood up and walked out of class, quit at Yale Law School, and went down to New York to be the highest paid antitrust lawyer in the history of that field.
So you both sort of share something very similar in the sense that you both left or got fired from a position that ended up changing your life so much for the better. You got him to quit. He built a name, and Rumsfeld, asked you to leave nicely the White House, and you went on to a great career. But the point I was trying to make is dissent was allowed.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yale, especially, may I say, they were so good to us. They were so unbelievably good to us. Bulldog, bow, wow, wow. Eli, Yale. They were so incredibly good to us. My wifey and I used to wander around that campus. We were as happy as clams. We were so happy you can't imagine.
But now you're beaten into the thought that you can't even, Rob, you can't even dissent. If you ask a question that goes against the grain, you will fail, right? When I was in college, right, I remember offending a teacher because I hated the Kennedys. And I didn't realize to the left, the Kennedys was this dynasty. But even in that case,
gods, to the left of Kennedy,
gods. I didn't realize I was offending his God. But even then, he was still a good guy, and we managed to figure out a good solution, Rob. Now, kids are teachers are nuts, and kids are probably terrified to ask. How many kids are going to say, "Why do I need a mask?" Then move up a letter. It's like this incremental thing. By the time you're 22, we are going to have a nation, Rob, of the most uninquisitive minds of generations.
Yeah, my girlfriend and I were having this conversation earlier about why young people are so stupid. and she asked, and I said, well, think about it. If you're indoctrinated for basically the first 12 years of your life through the public education system, 16 if you include college, by the time you're 22 or 23 years old, your entire existence has been one school of thought. And if you have a whole large group of people with one school of thought, no one's challenging each other. So by the time you're in an environment where you get challenged, you're so offended by being challenged that you don't even want to engage when the challenge is what it's all about, because it makes you a better thinker and a better person.
And under the heading of thinker and person, student, a better student. I mean, the fact that, when I then became one of the leaders of the anti-war and pro-Black Panther movement at Yale, and I was questioned and argued against by very, very clever conservatives. There were several in the class, and they were very clever, and I admired them, and they were very smart, and we're still friends after all these years. Now I don't know if that could happen.
Rob, somebody asks you, tell them about Cromwell Clay and Hamilton SE. I don't know what that is. I guess you. Carmel
and Hamilton Southeastern are two suburbs of Indianapolis. They're in Hamilton County, arguably the most wealthy county in the entire state of Indiana. And they're now it's a Republican county. It's rapidly becoming more blue, but they are involved in some of the most woke, critical race theory bullcrap that's going on right now in the public education system in the entire state, in Republican areas. And these superintendents and these school boards, they are just completely out in the open about it. And I would be scared to death to send my kid to Hamilton Southeastern or Carmel right now. It's amazing.
Wow. No,
I mean, it's like this viciously mad world. You have kids that are being indoctrinated. You're going to have 16-year-old kids that think it's okay for a boy to become a girl to become a boy. At the age of 8, you could give kids all these things that, so they don't hit puberty. So, I mean, we are living in frightening, scary ass times. And if anyone questions what happens, you lose a tournament. You lose your right of business in your community. That's what the threats are right now, what's going on. And it's going to take a lot of senators, and it's going to take people of courage. And there are some, but it's going to take a hell of a lot more of people with courage and people with self-fortitude and strength to say, this is not right. This is what we have here is what we got here is a failure to communicate. Good. Thank you. And it's really going to take a lot of that. And we are running out of time. I want to remind everybody, we will always be here. I can't promise what YouTube's going to do. We will reach you in one way or the other. We are honored and privileged that you watch and listen. So
grateful,
always remember,
deeply grateful.
We put the podcast up the next day. It's for, please, we're not here to make money off it. We just ask that you download it, give us a nice review, a semi-nice review, just a good review. That's all we ask for. And so just that we could keep on going. We live on reviews. And but on that note, I want Ben to finish up with something else. Ben, two people that you've met in your life, I want to bring up 2 points actually. Two people you've met in your life actually said they were the valedictorian the same year as you.
I
Two
know.
people, Rob, got caught in a lie.
Two. One, a very, 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 very successful, wildly successful screenwriter.
Tell the story.
And one, an incredibly successful, fairly successful movie producer.
But say the story of the writer. I mean, don't mention his name.
For a while here, I was a producer. I was really, really a wizard at thinking up storylines. And I would get studios to put up money for me to hire a writer to write a script of it. And so we were interviewing writers, and I interviewed this one very successful, famous writer. And I just making conversation, asked him his background. And he said, well, he was a lawyer by training. I asked him where he went to law school. He said, Yale. I said, really? He said, yeah. I said, may I ask when? And he said, yeah, class of 1970. I was really good at it. I was valedictorian of the class. And I said to him, well, sir, with the greatest respect, I was in that class and I was valedictorian. And what's going on here? And he had the incredible nerve to say, is this a job interview or are we playing 20 questions? And the other guy not only said he had valedictorian of the class at Yale, but he was an actual studio head. It was really crazy.
And by the way, please don't be scared. We will be here. I didn't mean to scare you. We will be here at the same time Thursday night. There's no doubt in my mind. I don't want to say that. And I never say never. But Ben, thank you for that wonderful story about your valedictorian class. And I want to say, when we first started this, part of the reason, Rob, we wanted to do this and why I enjoy when you're on so much, other than you being brilliant,
and very
handsome, and it just an all-out gorgeous fellow, is that you're inquisitive about Ben, and I really appreciate that, because I've got to be inquisitive of Ben Stein for 18 years. I've gotten to find out some of the coolest stories, and the whole idea when we started this was to sort of be the chronicles. So one night a week we are going to devote to sort of Ben's biography of his life. And I know for some, it's not going to be politics, but one night a week, because Ben's got some of the coolest stories in the world.
Very kind.
From his father to his grandfather to his cousins. It's endless amounts of stories that need to be recorded for say the word, posterity, and they need to be told. And I've gotten to hear them for 18 years, and Rob, you're always invited on that show because and your father. Bring your father on those shows, Rob, too, because I would love to hear the questions that he has for him. And on that note, I want to thank everybody that's been listening in the YouTube chat. It's been great. Download the podcast. We will see you here Thursday night. I didn't mean to scare you. Never be scared. And when you're right, never be scared. And on that note, I want to thank Rob Kendall from 93.1. The WIBC, BAM, the future of conservative talk radio. Rob, you were great as always. And of course, the show wouldn't be complete. You can find Ben on Parler at Ben Stein, spectator.org. We salute you. If you'd like to sing us out, that would be amazing, but your choice. I will.
She's real fine, my 409. She's real fine, my 409. My 409. Well, I saved my pennies and I saved my dimes. Giddy up, 409. For I knew there would be a time. Giddy up, 409. When I would buy a brand new 409.
Ben, one of these days, you're going to have to sing a song that we both know that we could sing along to. And on that note, God bless everybody. Have a great night.
God bless even Max.